On this episode, we talk to Yani Frye from Bad Luck Bar in Detroit on innovation in cocktails, building your own bar, and Detroit's growth in the bar and cocktail world. Yani, cheers.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thanks for doing this.
My pleasure.
I wanted to sit down with you because I love this bar. I love what you've done here, and just pick your brain about like what was the journey to get here.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, where did you start? How did you start in this industry?
It was semi by chance at a more or less a mom and pop Applebee's. It was a Chili's. Chili's technically. It was Chili's that was shut down for 5 or 6 years. So it was just dust, and they literally just shut the door. So they still had all the weird memorabilia still nailed and glued to the walls. And a local guy came in that had a bunch of other restaurants. I think he was doing fast food at the time, or still is, or whatever. And he's like, I want a cool local mom and pop semi kind of thing. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I was literally just turned 21. 2 days turned 21. A cousin of mine, who's more like an uncle, but technically a cousin, but in age more like an uncle, was the manager there, and I needed a job, and it was a couple miles away from my parents' house where I was living, and I got hired. And he looked at me, he's like, hey, did you say you bartended, or were you just a waiter, or were you just gonna do dishes in the back? And I thought to myself, well, I could run around and serve people food, which is always fun, but I could stand behind the bar and play with fun drinks and colors and just talk to people. Okay, I bartended. Yes, I know. I just turned 21 yesterday, and I've bartended a lot.
Brilliant.
So that's just kind of where I started. And I got lucky in the sense of getting hired a month before we opened. So I had a little bit of time to just fake it till I made it until we opened. And it was easy at the time because you learn a Long Island, you learn Appletini, Dirty Martini, your top 10 cocktails at the time, or all time, I should say, for more or less. I mean, regardless of where you are bartending, you should know how to make certain things.
You should learn how to make an Appletini.
Absolutely. I don't care where you're bartending now or have been or where you're going. You should always know what is in it and have had one or at least tried one. So learning all those. Fuzzy Navel was my first favorite weird cocktail. I always thought that was a really fun drink because you could have too many. I don't know. It's such a dumb drink, but, a little fruit juice and some peach liqueur. You can't go wrong. I mean, whatever. So fast forward to that, to realizing, well, you can only do so much with the scene, the people coming in, and nothing against the customers. It was, you can only offer to them what they're semi-expecting within reason. If they're coming into an Applebee's or a Chili's, they're in their mind have an expectation of, okay, this is the kind of drinks I can get, or what they're going to offer. These are the kind of beverages that they're going to offer. You can only push that envelope so much, because then you're just alienating your customer by saying, no, what you want isn't good enough. Try this new thing that I'm doing a little bit more higher level. And that's like, but I came in here looking for a pint of beer, and now you're selling me on some 20 ingredient old fashioned. That doesn't connect.
Yeah.
So I was really lucky and smart to just, okay, let's just go to more of the city life. And I went to a downtown area that had a lot of bistros, and that was kind of the thing. I guess, what year was that? Where bistros were really popular in the Midwest. 2000, I guess, 10, 2009, 2008, around then.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, let's do a bistro where it's like
gastropub.
Gastropub.
Yeah.
It's a burger, but you can order a la carte fries. Okay, that's cool. That's great. Nothing against it, but that was a big thing. And I went to one of those places right before they opened again, lucky just by chance, and showed up and said, hey, I've been bartending over here. Let's bartend over here instead. I would love to. This seems like more of a professional setting as opposed to my previous setting. Let's do this. And I, again, just lucked out, and the family trusted me, and I did my best being 22 and having 1 year experience and trying to do craft cocktails. And I think it worked out pretty good with no one in the city at that time knowing what an egg white sour was. So here I am doing just your basic gin or vodka because, it didn't matter at the time, and a little lemon and simple and an egg white. Oh my gosh. egg white, and I would shake that and give it to people, and people would freak out. So
Yeah.
that was just, okay, if I can do this, then let's keep going. And that literally, again, fast forwarded me to here, which is let's do almost anything and everything and offer people a really great experience, but also offer them something that they can't necessarily get anywhere else. And why we use a centrifuge to infuse flavors in certain spirits to make cocktails, because we want you to have an experience that you're not going to get at home or get at the local bar. We're all about the local bar, but we want to be able to offer people in our smaller, more intimate setting a reason why they're here to drink.
So you said a couple things. One, the fuzzy navel is my first drink I learned to make. My father was like, he had a good alcohol collection from his past. And then I think he had kids, myself and two siblings, and just like stopped entertaining. And then we got to an age where it's like we could be self-contained and he could entertain again. And he gave me like 2 or 3 Post-it notes with like how to make these things on them. It was like 5 drinks. And the first one was a fuzzy navel.
Amazing.
And so I was 13 and I just made a couple drinks for him and company. And then from there, you said another thing though, like you went and you learned these drinks while you were kind of on the job. And I went to a bartending school because a buddy wanted to do it. And I learned all these complex drinks, and they could have just taught me like the sour apple martini, the Long Island iced tea, relearned the fuzzy navel, things like that. And then I would have been fine. And I would have learned everything after that, because I taught so many friends how to get a job in this industry just by a couple things like that. And then anywhere you get hired is going to make you do a week of training.
Always.
And anyone wanting to enter into this has a certain level of confidence, which comes from, I think, a certain level of intelligence to really maximize a week of training and say, okay, I get this. And any questions they had, I was obviously there for them. But it was really interesting in that way. And then you make the place. I think that's so important, that like you have to really understand who your customer is, or they will tell you. Like you can have an idea of what your bar is, but like the customer and the bank will tell you otherwise. The bank when you run out of money, and because the customers don't show up.
Yep.
And if the customers want something,
I mean,
that's
more or
the
less
type of
within
bar you
reason. Yep. You got to, if you don't have guests, you don't have business. So it's great to make your, you're really awesome from your adaptation of 1952 cocktail that you found in a dusty old book. That's great. I love that. But that's only 1%, 10% out of the time. And that's great. But as long as you understand that's only a small percentage of what we're doing, and the majority is giving people that great time straightforward without having to think too much about what they're getting, because they're just enjoying the company. Yes, we offer really complex cocktails and things that we work really hard on and do a lot of research to try to offer to people, but at the same time, it's not our guests' job to have that knowledge that we do. And I think sometimes staffs, companies, beverage programs, they get too upset because the guest isn't as smart as they are, when they're never going to be, or they would be working with you.
How did this come to be? How did you move from bartending behind others' bars to creating this?
It was 100% a collaborative effort. My partner, Dave Kay, and our other partner, Mark Marchizola, who is the head chef, or I should say main partner investor at Wright & Company, which is a kind of like a bistro, nicer, 3 times bigger than this place, more of a space. Really cool spot. Before that place opened up, kind of the foundation first kind of thing for cocktail bars to really hit the scene was a place called Sugar House, downtown Detroit, I should say just outside of downtown in Corktown, but when I say that, it's like exactly 1 mile from the heart of downtown. And that's where I gravitated towards. I heard that the owner was doing a space that only had classic cocktails, and that intrigued me, only working at, semi-family restaurants and bistros. bistro bars and gastropubs, and I really am like, wow, this is what I want to do. I really want to just do old fashions and crazy Ramos gin fizzes and all sorts of zombies and wild cocktails, and this seems like someone as an owner is finally sharing the same thought process, motivation, passion, and I thought that was really cool. So I just gravitated and went there and got hired the second week that they were open, more or less, around that same time, and worked with Dave for, probably 5 years as their like head bartender, next to him, head mixologist, whatever, made up a title that we all love to throw out there. But, as the leader of the team, and we always had 101 classic cocktails on our menu that we could make at any time, in addition to always having like 10 to 20 seasonal drinks that we did quarterly. And thinking back on it is a lot to do, 80 drinks brand new every year, 60 drinks because we're doing it quarterly. So that's 4 menus, 10 to 20 drinks. You do the math, and we were open for 4 years. So for 5 years at the time when I was working there, I think they just turned 12. They opened in 2011. So at some point in 2016, Dave and I, we this place became online that we're in now, the Bad Luck, and it was just walls. Everything in this area called Capitol Park, which is in the heart of downtown. We're a block away from the center, Campus Martius, and this whole area was kind of desolate, even though it's a block away from Campus Martius, the downtown of Detroit. It was just vacant and just ready for life. And lucky for us, from having just a good name in the city of Detroit with Sugar House and Wright and Company, people hit us up and like, hey, this is a weird space, and we feel that it could be a cocktail bar. And we're not saying that you're the best, but you're kind of the leader in Detroit right now with cocktails and scene, in the scene and with such. So, do you want to take a shot at it? So I walked in here and it was just walls. There's just nothing. There's nothing. We built everything out in here, and it was cool just to see that opportunity of just, okay, here's a space. We're gonna make a small cocktail bar, and to have that idea is crazy in my mind at the time, because I always saw these little small speakeasies, and Sugar House is 100 seats, so we have 100 capacity, and to kind of have a small speakeasy wasn't really a thing in Detroit yet, and we thought, let's do it. Let's get crazy.
So you've been, as you said, 6 years now. So they say about 2 years is the success point. Like 1 year, anybody can open a bar, and not anybody, but like a lot of bars think they're doing good, and it's only been a year. Mm-hmm. But then the hype dies down, and it's really that second year that is the check mark. Like if you survive 2 years, you're pretty good. You're doing something well. So if you just maintain those levels, you're great. But after your third year, if I'm getting my timing correct, we hit COVID for you. Mm-hmm. How did that affect you? How did you all get through that?
We shut down straight up. And I think a lot of our success was due to us being really smart before that. We had no idea COVID was going to hit almost everyone, obviously. If you did, good for you being psychic, but no one really knew it was going to hit, or at least hit as hard as it was.
Yeah, totally.
And regardless of us thinking, we'll be shut down for a month or 2 months, we'll just call it a fun summer vacation snow day, extended, and obviously it turned into what it was. We were more or less closed down for the whole year. And obviously, we are a small space, we're a small staff, and we all loved working here, or at least, it was a tight-knit crew is what I'm trying to say. And we were all friends with each other to some extent, even though we were all professionals and working with each other. And we just stayed in communication, and unfortunately a lot of people couldn't return, and we could only keep on the top more seniors, and it was a real struggle. It was a real tough time, but I think a lot of that is just the tenacity of, we were always smart going into things, not having really big overheads, not biting off more than we can chew with doing menus or cocktail ideas and stuff. And I think just kind of always being, here we are, we're doing our thing. I don't try to spend too much money, or if any, throwing it out there with magazines and advertising. So we didn't have debt and stuff as much. So we were just
It's funny you talk about magazines.
freeze. You know what I'm saying? We're like, okay, here we are. We'll just freeze. We still have to pay rent, which is the thing. But other than that, we got out. That year back was tough. I was working every day doing multiple things. I think honestly that's a big thing. A lot of us did double duties, triple duties. I couldn't necessarily hire a cleaning person back the second we opened. It took 6 months before we were like good. So I cleaned it. Whatever. We didn't have a bar back necessarily, so I did that. Yeah. Someone else was, we didn't have 3 bartenders that we normally had. We only had 2, so the guys and the gals would just hustle a little harder, and they were cool with that, and that's what we did. And I think that was also another thing.
Helped
getting
you get
us
back.
through.
Yeah.
To now we're 5 days again. So we were 6 days. Yeah.
So what days do you close? Sunday, Monday?
Sunday, Monday now.
Nice.
When we ended up being open Monday just for that last year. So we were open for Monday for 1 year, and then COVID hit. So, but now we're back to 5 days, which is fine.
So what? Why Bad Luck Bar? What's the name?
There's a lot of things. Myself and Dave, my partner, will tell you different stories. I like my story. I'll tell you his story.
Perfect.
My story is that the idea of having a one-door entrance and exit, we were unsure of if we were even going to get approved to open the bar. And then once we started doing work, we still were unsure if we were going to be able to open the bar because the city was like, ooh, we're kind of maybe thinking changing our minds. We're like, oh my gosh, we're halfway there. You can't tell us no now. You already told us yes. What do we got to do? So a lot of us was like, the public and other friends and family were like, that's like bad luck to open a bar in an alley with no windows, one door, no signage really, in downtown Detroit, which isn't really scary now, but has a name of...
Has a reputation.
Has a reputation of being a little tough. If you're walking down random alleys, it's probably not the thing to do in Detroit of all cities. So to kind of have all of these crazy things together in the perfect storm, I embrace that. I believe personally that if you think of bad luck, if you start your day and think that this is going to be a bad day, regardless of that day being good or bad, it will be a bad day. You put that energy out there, and that's what I think you get. So by us saying, hey, we're called Bad Luck, I like to play with that and say that you lose your bad luck when you're here.
Yeah.
And you leave and you start fresh.
Well, certainly if you already made it through the alley,
100%.
you're 50% there.
You found it. You got in the door. We let you in. We're like, hey, here you are. Everything's cool. Another little thing is I'm Greek, and a big Greek thing that I've always grown up with is the evil eye, the mati. Mm-hmm. And that was a fun thing for us to kind of play with the idea of bad luck and good luck and mythology and astrology and witchcraft and all these kind of like folklore kind of things. So we had a really fun time merging the Greek eye with like the all-seeing eye of Ra, and that's some of our imagery that is our neon lights, and we love to tell people that that's kind of that it wards off the evil. It was always a thing that you wear an evil eye jewelry for protection. So that's kind of the angle, and I really thought that it was a lot of fun, and there's a lot of elements and cool things to be inspired by to make cocktails and to create an ambiance based around that style.
So my wife carries all those types of bracelets,
Mm-hmm.
an evil eye, a red band from somewhere else, everything like that. And God help me if that evil eye bracelet falls off. It's like a cheap bracelet from Greece back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And if that thing falls off while she's walking the dog or something like that, it's my fault. I've done something. What have I done?
Mm-hmm. Good thing there's lots of Hennessy to smooth things over.
Right. So what's the other story?
The other story is Dave loves to read, and read a book by the author that is escaping me at the moment, but he did Blade Runner.
Okay.
That author, and he ended up in his professional life going a little crazy towards the end, and just obviously kept writing books, Blade Runner, other books I can't think of, and wrote his last book, and it's like a really long, weird title. But if you look up the author of Blade Runner and you look up his last book, it's that book, and in there, it's not even a place, but it's a mention of a place called Bad Luck, and it's a bar where people kind of meet to get things done. And that's it. Like, it's just a reference, just in passing. He just thought that was so fucking cool, and I can't disagree.
Yeah.
And he's like, that'd be a cool name.
So the two things came together.
So we're like, yeah, okay, great. That's perfect. I love all of that. That gives me a starting point and an inspiration to why we're doing everything. And you are that random collection of carbon molecules that spit out a random idea, because, nothing in life is on purpose necessarily. I think everything's just coincidence and random. So keep your eyes and ears open, and there's lots of things to be inspired by. So
Totally.
when we're like, hey, we're going to open a bar, what should we name it? What should we do? What should we paint the colors? How should we do our whole mood board? We walked in the space and started from there. And I think that helps us get an organic feel to the place. We didn't manufacture a space in our heads and then buy this place and then, okay, we're going to do it. No, we had to okay, here's what we have. Let's try to fit as many people in at the bar that we can. How many stations can we do? Okay, this has to make an adjustment, and here we are.
So how did you get from Sugar House that was largely classics, very, taxidermy, lots of wood, everything like that, to this premise where the name kind of fits into a lot of the cocktails as far as the astrology and the mysticism I've seen. I've had a cocktail here with a tarot card covering it, and you do a whole reading with that. Where did that all come from? Where was the switch to go from classics to
it was just
Imaginarium?
It's having a purpose. It's having a reason. I don't want to give people you have to have a reason for what you're doing. Why are you where you are? Not to say that everything's random like I just did, but if you're going to a cocktail bar, what are you doing there? Are you talking to people? Are you drinking? Are you getting drunk? Are you just doing a little alcohol? I mean, there's so many things that you can do when you're in the public. So we wanted to make sure that, okay, we have Sugar House. We're known. We've been open for many years now. People know that we do classic cocktails. We do it really well. We have 4 fancy bartenders behind the bar at bar stations, all shaking cocktails all night long. It's a hot scene. It's Friday night. It's fun. We wanted to. How can we without, again, alienating everyone in certain demographics? We still have a beer, and we still have $200-$300 cognacs, rums, whiskeys, you name it. We have the Pappy 13-year for $330 an ounce, which is what it is for the rarity and how much we paid for the bottle and etc. We have Hennessy Paradis, which is the only bottle that we've ever gotten, and that's been pretty good. That's probably a quarter of the way down since we've been open. Actually, we didn't get that at the beginning of the year. We got that halfway through. So that was actually 2-3 years, 3/4 of that bottle. So that's a fancy one. So again, to be able to have a place in my mind where someone's spending $200-$300 on cognac sitting next to a guy who's drinking a beer and an old fashioned is a magic in my mind.
Yeah.
And doesn't really happen in most places. So I really would just liked that idea of just offering that in addition to we're all really talented and smart and have a passion for flavors and cocktails and trends and things that are happening around the world and in our backyard as well, and to just elevate everything. An old fashioned's an old fashioned, that's great, but what if we really just upped the ante and did truffle infused bitters, and instead of just doing a standard bourbon, let's do something that people wouldn't necessarily ever use in a cocktail because it's too fancy or it's too nice or it's too rare. I don't think there's anything wrong personally with using Hennessy XO in a cocktail. I think that you have to.
So either.
I think that you need to be a little bit more conscious about what you're doing, and it's easy to be reckless with things that have taken years to make. I mean, if you don't know how Hennessy XO is made, that's one of my favorite reads. 130 or more different eau de vies blended together. I mean, that's fucking crazy to think about someone or a small group of people tasting things that are what they have eau de vies in there that are 100 years old or more.
That's the parody.
Or parody, but still, XO is 50 years old is some of the oldest. I mean, that's still crazy for me to think about, that there's juice in this bottle that was aged before
you cared about alcohol or were a thought.
Or the person who's making it, made it and knew that they were going to die before they ever could taste it or check it out or try it. That's a wild thing in my mind. So,
yeah, I think there's moments that you can take a cocktail, you can take a spirit, and you can put it in. You mentioned the egg white sour before. It's like at a time it didn't matter what the base was in it, and it's it's true. It's just see what flavor profile, what little note of flavor do you want from that base. Cool, pick that one. Go from there, but it's really about the rest of it. And then there are other cocktails that are, like this Sazerac, that it's like that base matters. So you need a better understanding of what that base is. And then somewhere along, like there's, you come back from this and somewhere in between there's an Negroni where the base matters, but the other things also matter
100%.
a lot. And, it's finding out those unique things. And one of the things I love about visiting new bars is seeing their take on it. Like I know how I like my Sazerac. I know how I like my old fashioned, how I like my Manhattan. But I haven't tasted every vermouth in the world. Right. Or I haven't tasted every combination of a vermouth and
especially
a base. So what's your take on it? And I love seeing that at different bars, and there are different things. So what's Bad Luck's take on that? Like how do you get a whole team, even a small team, to all be aligned so that every time I come in, like, I don't need you to be behind this bar?
That was a tough thing for, honestly, me personally. I came from bartending almost as a solo sport, because regardless of your team, I wasn't the owner. I'm there representing myself. When guests came in, they're like, I'm dealing with this guy. I'm not dealing with a place, and there's a pride that comes with that, of course, and an ego, unfortunately. And once you kind of get past that, which for me was just time, you learn, you live and you learn, you really start to let go on, yes, here is this recipe that I made, because you can come up with a recipe too, and it's arbitrary, and everything is within reason. I don't want to say the same, but you can only stir a cocktail so many different ways. You can only shake a cocktail so many different ways. And there's variances, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing, more or less, with the actions. So once I mentally was able to okay, I can tell everyone else my quote unquote secrets, if you will, that was the beginning. That was the start. So just having senior bartenders and people who are here, because everyone that works here wants to do this. They're not just here and passing. That's a privilege of us and our staff, that people gravitate and we look and see and hire people that want to do this. So that's just right out the gate. We're lucky to have that, because a lot of places don't. It's like, I'm here, I kind of know how to bartend, or I know how to bartend, but I really don't care, or I'm doing something else, which is fine. I have nothing against people having multi-faceted lives or, lifestyles and personalities and professions. But for here, one of the main focus that people do is they care about hospitality and they care about making fun drinks. So serving people and making fun drinks. So the fact that we have that, I did the first menu, every single drink I did 100% myself, more or less. Of course, I was always open to feedback and tweaking things with our team and oh, hey, this tastes a little bit like this. Let's try this out. But more or less, I'm here's the menu. Let's make them. Okay, great. And then over the years, it's okay, I see what you did here, Yanni. Look what I did here, kind of a similar thing. And it just naturally evolved
to a collaboration.
100%.
I think that's a huge maturity factor in what you said earlier about letting people, like opening up the kimono, so to speak, letting everybody, see your tricks, the way you approach things, because I know people that are amazing mixologists, chefs, whatever, but they held their kimono too tight, and it limited their ability, especially as a bar owner, to expand, because they were never willing to give 100% of the recipe away.
Sure.
It was almost like have you heard the stories about the old like tiki bars where
Trader Vic's?
where they'd have like
Don
syrup
the Beachcomber.
number 7,
Don the Beachcomber mix number 6.
and so you never knew what was in it because he just held the keys too tight, and that's great, but you are now limiting your expansion beyond that, and I think at the end of the day, I think there's one of the motivational speakers nowadays that says, like, talk to anybody about your business idea. Talk to anybody about any of your ideas. If there are very few people that have the guts to actually go out and do it. So they could take your recipe, and the only thing I would say is if somebody takes a recipe, just like mention it.
Sure.
I got this from Bad Luck Bar. This is Yanni's recipe, or this is Jordan's recipe, or this is whatever. It's like, fine.
Or even just a regional thing,
just a
I think
reference,
that's fine too. I
think it's amazing.
It's a food, people get too hung up on that with everything.
Yeah.
And you can't copyright food, so you can't copyright drinks, so whatever.
Yeah. And trying to copy brings out some beautiful renditions.
And I think that, the last word is somewhat argued as being a Detroit cocktail, as not being a Detroit cocktail, with whatever, in recent light of new historical documents, findings, or whatever, some scrap piece of napkin that someone found. Like, oh, well, this person said that they had a last word in this city or state, and it contradicts. This doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you make a last word equal parts. Oh, you make it with not equal parts. Oh, you make it with whatever. Who cares? It's within reason. Chicken noodle soup is, you have mirepoix and you have chicken and you have noodles and water, of course. But there's a million ways to make chicken noodle soup.
And what type of ego do you need to have to record every step of what you did? Like, Dave was the first person to drink this cocktail at this time.
I have some of that historical because I was very into that initially.
But like when they go back 100 years ago and they go, do you think the guy that invented X classic cocktail, it's like somebody on the other side of the earth could have been playing with a very similar combination, especially when you're looking at like an egg white sour.
Sure.
It's like, where was the first one of those? I don't know, but
no one will ever know. And it's all just fun stories.
Yeah.
But that's cool. And that's another fun thing about bartending is that the lore, the stories. But you got to not take things too seriously. I think some people are like, no, well, I heard that the Raffles in Singapore invented the Singapore sling. And like, no, well, I heard if you read this one book, the cocktail recipe is in there as a straight sling. And then the bartender at the Raffles Hotel was inspired by that and just added some fruit juice to it to make it more sweeter for the hotel guests, which makes sense. Well, now that's the whatever, man. Whatever.
Yeah. So I've got there was a bar that opened in Toronto. It's this back alley speakeasy. It's not there anymore.
Right on.
But it's like behind a sneaker shop or something. Like they had this extra. They had more storage than the sneaker shop needed.
Fun.
And so one of the owners was like, cool. Contacted XYZ. Got this bar in there. It was pretty cool. The bar was like, I think it was like old radiators were like the bar front.
Okay.
And they built
I can
something
imagine
on top
that.
of it, like true 1920s speakeasy. Like this isn't supposed to be here. I'm pretty sure they had a liquor license though. But they researched all the oldest recipes. So I remember going in there and friends were excited because Toronto, we had a number of things going, but like we didn't have, you could count the number of actual cocktail bars where there's full dedication to the program on cocktails, not just like a restaurant that had some cocktails.
Kept the vermouth in the fridge.
Yeah. And but their old-fashioned recipe, they were like, this is the oldest old-fashioned recipe we could find. And it was what I would later learn is a Wisconsin old-fashioned, which for those that haven't had a Wisconsin old-fashioned, just look up the YouTube videos of people making a Wisconsin old fashioned, because
There's nothing wrong with the drink. There's just a lot wrong with
the pride they take in how crap it is.
The presentation.
Yeah, yeah. And I should be the one celebrating a brandy-based old fashioned more than anyone, and I'm still like, I can't wrap my head around this. So there's something to be said for the original recipe, and there's something to be said for tweaking for today's palate
Or the place or the environment.
Totally.
You know, a pina colada with, you know, whatever
in the winter in Detroit,
the fake Coco Lopez when you're on the beach at a resort
is amazing.
But if you take that garbage, quote unquote garbage drink, and say you're drinking that in Detroit, depending on the day. I mean, because I can argue, well, if it's winter, it makes you think of that time. But if you know what I'm saying, it's not the same.
Giuseppe Gonzalez
It's not the same.
Stands behind Coco Lopez in
nothing
in
against
a
it.
pina colada.
I just meant like that.
No, I know,
I
I know exactly what you mean.
You know, with flavored, you know, the cheapest flavored rum, you might. Oh, that's great when I'm in Cozumel at the resort.
Yep.
But when you're at your home bar, that's like you would. What? You would scoff. You absolutely not scoff at that look at the bartender like you're crazy for even picking up a bottle of Malibu. But when you're in Jamaica, let that Ray and nephew flow, baby. An old fashioned, right? Yes.
You sound so far away. I can't hear you in my ear anymore. So you're curacao washing. So you take the label off, but you leave the yellow cap on so you know what it is. You're pretty even. My left hand is not nearly as quick as my right. I have to slow down my right stir to keep my left from looking like it's been drinking too much. Bad luck,
So I made a not old-fashioned. It has everything that's in an old-fashioned, but it's not an old-fashioned.
Cheers, let's look at. Done.
Yeah, a not old-fashioned because you have spirit, water, sugar, bitters. I like having a little bit of fruit, but I don't want to have simple syrup always on hand at home, so a bottle of orange liqueur works great. Do a rinse, do a dash of bitters, do some cognac, stir it. I like it. It's a little strong at first, but it's meant to sip. Normally you're making this with home ice, so it's not. I don't usually have cubes at home.
Yeah.
So here it is.
I quite enjoy. I've been playing recently with not a lot, but a couple drinks like this, especially with something like XO.
Sure.
Reductionism. Like
I don't have things at home. I mean, I don't want to say I don't have things at home, but I am a professional. I don't full-time bartend like I used to every night, but even when I did, I was never coming home and being like, let's make a zombie. Yeah. Or even after my shift at work before I left, even if I had, regardless of my drinking consumption level, which was always professional and appropriate, because you got to be aware you're the adult at the party, not the kids, unfortunately. But anyways, being responsible and having, a one little nightcap before you go home, I never wanted to make I don't know how you were. Some bartenders I've seen will like make a 30 ingredient cocktail and prep it and like do it, and that's great. But I'm like minimalism, and I think that's great. And you can do this. I don't want to say almost anywhere, but having those 3 ingredients in a bar without having fruit in a peeler or just fruit in general or simple syrup made, boom, done.
But I'm really interested in the reductionism aspect. It's like when you pick specific ingredients, what interests me about cocktails now is not so much it's like, can you make a great daiquiri? Can you make a great Negroni? Can you make a great Manhattan? But like, what about this rye inspired the choice of this vermouth, inspired the choice of this bitter in your Manhattan?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and do you need the specs that we all think of in a Manhattan, like a 2-1, or are you going 4-1, or where are you going with
or
it?
flipping it?
And why did you make that decision? Like, these are the things that really interest me about that. And it's like if I'm using Carpano Antica as a real simple example, I'm not going to use as much of it as I would another vermouth.
Or Punta Mace, which is essentially the same thing, but a little bit more bitter. So you have a little bit more wiggle room to not be as sweet.
So I like being able to take different ingredients and just either highlight them or highlight an aspect of them by real reductionism in it. It helps that I also like booze forward cocktails, because reductionism, it immediately means probably less filler
Things. Yeah, absolutely. It was almost awesome. The whole hotel cocktail trend. I love the idea of it. Let's make drinks without having anything, but I think you need just a little bit of something to be able to make a little bit of nothing.
Yeah.
Having a bottle of bitters goes a really long way, as opposed to just like, let's just make some Hennessy and some water. Like, that's cool, but I need a little more if I'm going to consider that necessarily a cocktail. I mean, Hennessy on the rocks is great. Whatever, bourbon on the rocks, rum on the rocks, whatever.
Yeah.
But if we're like saying we're going to make a drink, I'm making a cocktail, I'm like doing something. You got to do something more, a little bit more. That's all. And I think that's where you're also getting it with the idea of reductionism. It's not just having Hennessy VSOP on a rock, but it's also not as complex necessarily as an old fashioned. But I could argue that this could be as complex as an old fashioned because it's hitting all the same points, just in a lateral way. And I think that people don't necessarily see that. They're like, oh no, this is an old fashioned because of X, Y, and Z. This is a Wisconsin old fashioned. There is no other old fashioned. Like, why can't you just, anything could be anything, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Why not? Technically the first old fashions didn't have ice. So you just had room temperature water because they didn't have ice machines. How authentic do we want to get?
You had sugar, and you had to add water to like dilute the sugar to create simple syrup. They say, my favorite thing is they say simple syrup is the first molecular mixology ingredient where somebody realized, hey, to make this drink easier, we could pre-dilute the sugar.
It's amazing.
Mind blown.
Mind blown.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So that's just, I really love that kind of aspect of playing with that idea of like, anything can be anything within reason.
Yeah.
I love that. The idea of, and honestly, the real reason I got into, now that I'm thinking about this after a cocktail, that I was inspired by bartending. I guess I told you how I got into it and how I got here, but why I stayed in it. It's great to talk to people. It's great to make connections. It's fun to have a different night every night. There's a million, it's fun, it's loud, it's exciting, whatever. You get to meet so many people. Who cares? That's great. There's a lot of jobs you can do that. The cool thing that really blew my mind was the ability to, in my mind, make magic in front of myself. And I know what I was doing the whole time. I did it. I was the magician, and I still am blown away by the magic. And the magic was my dad got me a book. It was a cocktail book. My dad used to be a chef for many, many years. So he was, he's on the up and up on food and culinary skills and all that jazz. So I was bartending for a couple months. I bought myself the Jerry Thomas 1882 edition of
Like an original copy?
It's like the one of the reprints.
Okay, yeah.
It's like the
I've got
revised
that.
deluxe edition.
It says like $250 on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great book. I didn't understand any of it. I'd literally still, I mean, even now having, almost 20 or 15 years hospitality and bartending experience, I still have some of that stuff is fucking weird and just like doesn't make sense, and you have to like look it up because it just doesn't exist anymore. But anyways, that was my first book. I'm like, this isn't really helping me. So my dad just got me some random book from Barnes & Noble at the time. It might have been Borders Books. They were still around. But anyways, some random bookstore. And it had in there a gin sour. It had a bunch of other drinks, sour mix. But this book had contradictory ideas of using sour mix or using fresh juice. And
Like they just grabbed recipes from anywhere.
just a random book of recipes that had some cool, fun pictures in it. I'm like, oh, look at this nightclub in Brazil. They make a caipirinha. Here's what a caipirinha is. And it's just like a generic version of a caipirinha. But then some drinks were like, use sour mix. Some drinks were like, squeeze half of a lime. And one drink was a gin sour, powdered sugar, fresh lime juice, gin, shaken, strained, drink it. And I made that like in the first 6 months of bartending. And to be able to take, it was specifically Beefeater gin, and an old lady, really old lady at the time, really nice lady. I don't even know who she was.
Well, probably still old.
She's
Not just at the time.
living anymore. She's she was 100 when I met her, and she's like, Beefeater gin, that's the gin. And I'm like, that's disgusting. I hate gin. It's so gross. On the rocks, gin and soda, gin and tonic at the time.
You just lost your bartender card.
It was so gross. Well, I was 21. I don't know
Yeah,
anything. And Fuzzy Navel was, again, my favorite drink. So what do I drinking gin for? And the fact that I took something in my mind that was so gross and I made it, I'm like, this is the best thing.
I love gin.
This is the best drink I've ever had in my life. And I've been to some bars and I've been to parties. I'm like, why is no one making a gin sour with fresh lime juice and powdered sugar and gin and shaking it? Why is that not a thing? And at that point, I made it my passion and job to be like, we're going to do things for real. And that's how I got here.
Do you think every bartender reaches that point where of a certain age, I'm going to say, every bartender of a certain age reaches a point where they force gin on somebody knowingly or unknowingly?
Absolutely. I did that.
Where they're like, I love
did
vodka.
That. I 100% did that. I don't want to say I'm ashamed or regretful of it because it was what it was and I didn't know any better at the time. But yes, I think you shouldn't do that anymore. And I'll tell anyone, do not fucking do that. And absolutely not. That's so dumb. Because in my quick logical philosophy, you give someone that great vodka drink, they're not upset, they calm down, they see what's going on in the room, and they're like, oh, hey, bartender, thanks for making me that stupid-ass vodka drink the first time around, because that's what I wanted, and I don't want to listen to your jib-jab, whatever. Why don't you make me whatever you want? Great. Sounds great. No problem. Versus the opposite of like forcing it the first time around. Don't do that. Don't, just let it happen. Let it happen naturally.
So the bar where I first got complete control, this was 13 years ago. No, I've been with Hennessy for 13 years. It was 15 years ago, and I had 2 vinegar cocktails on the menu in Toronto on like the hot strip of nightclubs and everything. But the third cocktail on the menu was a Cosmo made with fresh lime, like a splash of cranberry. So it was actually pink instead of a vodka cranberry with orange in it. It was a beautiful Cosmo, and we flamed the orange twist solely
Dale de
a la Dale de Graaf. So that, because people would come up and be like, oh, vinegar, like the second drink had balsamic vinegar in it. And they were like, what the And then the third drink was a Cosmo. And so they went, oh, we'll take the Cosmo.
Yep.
And they'd order it from us and then look at each other and start having a conversation. And then this like burst of flame would go off like in the corner of their eye. I mean, wait, what did you just do?
I just found your orange peel.
Yeah.
So whatever.
And then they'd have the Cosmo and they'd come back and say either I want another one of those. That's the best Cosmo I've ever had. Or make me whatever you want. Some of them would give the caveat of, but it's got to be vodka. And then I'd be like, okay. And then it was, here, I made you this. If you don't like it, I got it.
Of course.
And it was not vodka. It was
Of course.
It was
It was always
juniper
gin.
flavored vodka.
It was always juniper flavored vodka, always. But we've learned. I remember so this is a great thing. Year one at Sugar House, we didn't have vodka. Period. Zero.
I think there was a stage though where bars, I think especially like
and
mixology bars,
there wasn't anything bad about
Graviers,
it. It was just the beginning.
It was a way to just take that off the table. It was like forcing the issue.
It was 100% saying, "Hey, there is more to cocktail scenes than a single spirit that has a variety of executions and flavors."
Yeah,
that's it.
You have to do this. We're taking that away.
We couldn't do flavored vodkas because essentially we had liqueurs because that's a tried and true tradition.
Yeah,
got to have that. I mean, we had liqueurs. People would argue, well, Eau de Vie's liqueurs, which one was first? But I mean, whatever.
Doesn't matter.
It's at the beginning.
Flavor to alcohol.
A little bit of flavor and sugar to alcohol is a thing, but the idea of removing that sugar or adding artificial flavors to the spirit and then having it just be an alcohol with fake flavor, we were against, and we still are. We have no flavored vodkas here.
So you were against flavored vodka at Sugar House or all vodka?
We had all vodkas.
No vodka.
And then after like a couple months, we're like, okay, we'll have like a plain vodka because there's no reason like to have a nice Polish traditional Russian I want to say generic, but straightforward, classic vodka.
No nonsense vodka.
I know nonsense vodka. Even something as popular as like Kettle One is arguably a no nonsense vodka in the classic sense because they're an old family and they make vodka and it's vodka. Great. So we had that after a minute, but still to this day we have even in this bar Sugar House, no flavored vodkas necessarily. There
so
might
if
be
you
like
wanted to flavor something, you would just flavor it yourself.
Yep, use a syrup or a bitters or a tincture or a liqueur.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah, genius.
That's it.
And so I think there was a rise at a time of like bars needing to. It's like they would also have an egg white sour on the menu, bars that didn't have a vodka, because they needed to like legitimize what they were doing.
Sure.
Like you needed in like a couple statements to say like, this is what you're going to get here. Recognize that. And not everyone did it delicately, but I think it was a point, and thankfully we've moved past it.
Yes.
I think as the most part, but it helped solidify, it helped to sometimes jarringly move the customer into the boxes we wanted to start asking more questions. Like, this isn't bad. We just want you to not have it as an option so that you have to ask questions about it. So I had this thing about like egg white in a cocktail does the same thing as my theory. My theory is always want to drink on a menu that makes you ask a question. Like, why the fuck is this in this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love the breakfast martini.
Yep.
Why did you just put jam or marmalade,
orange marmalade,
in that guy's drink? And it's like, oh, well, this is why. Because it works really well, and a marmalade or a jam
Mouthfeel,
is basically
sugar.
like a liqueur
No
without
alcohol.
the alcohol. Like, it's got all the flavors. It uses all parts of the orange, blah, 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 blah. I like those questions. Like, I like, a little bit of draft beer. Like, I use an IPA in a drink, like an ounce of it.
100%.
So that somebody could be like, did you just put beer in that martini? And it's like, yeah. And this is why I did it. Like, I want to force engagement. But if I, as the bartender, am forcing engagement, like just spouting knowledge at you, you might not be receptive.
It doesn't matter.
I want that moment where you order the Miller High Life, and then you see everything going around, and you're now forced to engage with something. Piqued your interest, and now you're engaging with me, and now I get to show you what type of bar you're in.
It's so much easier. I hate forcing anything, and I always tell everyone who's starting to bartend here, I don't care where you've been, how much experience you have. First, here's what we do straightforward. Here's stirring and shaking. Here's our logic and our workflow on things, and then beyond that, it's all hospitality. It's
Totally.
talking to people. You know, this is such a crazy bar in the sense of like we might have nights where we don't have a lot of guests number wise, and we do high volume or high numbers in sales because some people are just like, hey, there's no one here. Let's talk about what weird bottle you have that's collecting dust that I would love to spend some money on and sit here and just marinate over whatever you're going to tell me.
Well, I see a couple.
We got a few.
Yeah.
And, you know, the cool thing is we don't have windows, so it's not going bad anytime soon. There's no UV damage to any of our booths, so it's going to be here. And it's cool for a Tuesday night when we don't have too many people in here and people can be like, yeah, let's do a $100 old fashioned and just get wild.
What?
Or a Saturday where we have 10 times more people and just people are just coming in and getting straightforward drinks.
What's really cool about your back bar, and if for those that can't see it, you need to come here because it adds to the mysticism here because it's just like they're backlit. And so you can, if you know the bottle, you can tell it's that bottle. But you can't really, like a lot of them are shadows.
It's just a blur.
Yeah.
It's a working
It's
piece
very
of art.
cool.
Dave always said at Sugar House we had a lot of selection that wasn't. I mean, it was on. We had like a spirits menu and stuff, but you know, we're not utilizing every bourbon that's on the bourbon shelf in a cocktail. It's like we have a bunch of bourbons that are just we have them. You want them on the rocks, or if you want an old fashioned with them or whatever, we can got them. But it's a. He would tell other people in interviews and stuff, and I learned from him. Obviously, you watch Dad. It's a working piece of art. It's like we don't need to sell the Octomore every night. We can have the one bottle and it's there and we know about it, and when someone asks about it or if someone's like I
or
really
the 7
love
bottles.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one every year. And we have it and
Yeah.
you can try it out, and at the same time if that's not what you're into and you just want whatever, we got that too, and that's great. And I love having that that feel of both. And that's really important.
So what has been the biggest learning of going from, you know, managing somebody else's bar, running somebody else's bar, head bartender, whatever you want to word it, because I think there's a lot of fluidity between these roles, to owning your own. What was the biggest learning within that step?
So I made up an idea called the absinthe conversation, which is, and it's a lot of it is with guests. And you can also, you know, potentially use this with your staff, but it's more with guests, and the idea of like you're bartending and two people are at the bar and one person starts talking about absinthe and it does this and that and it's really crazy and they were in France and they lost their mind and they have a cool new tattoo because they drank absinthe and they woke up and they have it's just the most craziest stories that probably didn't happen. That's cool, whatever. But I would always, at a younger age, interject and be like, hey, just so you know, absinthe's not illegal. I have many bottles. Oh, you don't have the real stuff. You don't have... And at a point, long story short, you get to where it doesn't matter how much you correct the guest, because it's not... They don't give a shit if you're telling them the right thing. They're regaling a fucking made up story to their friend or their date or whatever that they're there with. And you're just some guy that's actually...
Bro, you're killing my pickup.
Actually knowledge. So why? If they ask me, I will be like, hey, just so you know, that's an incorrect fact. You asked me, hey, so you don't have any absinthe, right? Oh, you just asked me. But I learned the hard way to not step in to correct people and just to allow things to happen. And that's the same idea with your question of maturity, of going from not knowing anything, being a bartender, and saying, yeah, I mean, how do you make that apple martini? I just want to make sure we're making it the same way because I had no idea. So you say, hey, how do you make it? Yeah, that sounds good. I'll make it the same way. To telling people that this is the preferred bitters or the amount of bitters in an old fashioned.
Yeah.
To saying, hey, within reason, anything is anything. So it's like this big arc personally, because I, started bartending, and then you get to a point where you're working with people, and we have classes that I don't teach anymore, but the senior current staff at Sugar House teaches, but Mixology 101, there's classes that they'll do like a focus of just like rum for 2 hours or scotch for 2 hours. And I taught those after Dave taught those because he was like, listen, it's great. I love teaching these. I just can't talk to this many people anymore. Hey, Yanni, why don't you come here on a Sunday morning and talk to 20 people about how to make an old fashioned? Sounds great. I'm excited. That sounds great. So it was really fun for me to do that and to go from, okay, I'm trying to teach myself how to do something that I have no idea to now I'm working with people that don't necessarily know what they're doing, but we're all working together to achieve the same goal of making something great, to talking to guests that have no idea anything. And it was really wild because we would have guests that do the classes that have never been at the bar. So they would come in on a Sunday morning and be like, wow, this place is so cool. I'm like, so yeah, this is what we do. This is what we're about. We don't have flavored vodkas, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, holy cow. They'll ask me questions like, wow, you guys do this and bottle? I'm like, yeah, have you not been here before? They're like, no, we just saw this fun thing to do and no one else is offering mixology classes or how to make an old fashioned at home. So here we are. And then
awesome.
They usually come back later on that night.
What a beautiful marketing
or
tool.
Later on that week or month or whatever. And that's super cool. But to be able to talk to guests in a way that, and you're teaching them because they want to learn, they're paying for you to teach them how to make an old fashioned. We did a Sazerac. We did an old fashioned in Manhattan and a daiquiri, or like just a lime, simple syrup, rum, shaken strain. Just so we had a shaken cocktail and then 2 stirred cocktails. And that was great. And then people really loved that. We all made them together. We had little stations so that you came in and did that. To, again, being just around to, okay, now, hey, Yanni, you've been here for 5 years. You know how to make every single drink that we've ever made, ever. This guy has only worked in bartending for 1 year. Show him what's up. Have him be able to work next to you. And it's such a I'm so proud inadvertently, and I know that's a weird thing to say, but like I know so many bartenders that literally came from nowhere. They were valet, they were chefs, they were salespeople, and they were like, Yanni, I want to learn how to bartend, or here I am. I got hired for whatever reason. I'm training to be a bartender, and I worked with these people, and now they're bar managers or bar owners around the city after so many years, and it's crazy to think about, So
and you were a pivotal point in that trajectory.
Wild. It's hard. Wild. It's hard for me to like say that
Cheers
I was, but because I don't like having that ego in that sense. But it's crazy too. Of like you've never bartended to here is the skills to now you're a head bartender at the place that I used to work at. Now you're a percentage owner, equity, whatever, at a place that you are helping to create the concept. It's wild. And
that is wild.
Being in Detroit for, what was it? I say 2000, whatever. So like 13 years, 14 years, 15 years in Detroit. I guess that happens after so many years of being in the same place.
Yeah. So what about you? If not hospitality, like you caught the bug early.
Mm-hmm.
If not hospitality, where would you have seen yourself?
Oh man, this is in my blood. Not to say that I would be doing other things, but my father was a chef. My mother is still a hair.
You're one of the rare.
Stylist.
You're a unicorn.
I'm
one
just
of the rare few.
Weirdly, and I a few years back when someone was asking me on some random interview about when we were opening this bar, like, oh, how did you end up in the bartending? And I thought about it for a second. I weirdly had this like, almost like you're about to get murdered or die, and you have like a flash.
Like, how did you not end up here?
Everything. Yeah. And at that one weird moment, I don't remember what the interview was. I wish I could tell you. I realized that I grew up and maybe it's a Michigan thing or maybe it's a Greek thing. Both my parents were, are Greek. I don't know what it was, but we always had a wet bar at all of my houses. My grandparents had a wet bar, full wet bar, like 6 seats in a basement with a sink, wet bar. My parents had a wet bar, 6 seats in their basement, bar. So my uncle and my grandparents, who gave it to my uncle, my dad's brother, has a restaurant, a diner, who has a 10-seat diner countertop bar with, stools and stuff. I grew up there. I would sit at the one counter, and that's what I would do for the whole day, and until my mom was done with work and picked me up from the restaurant or whatever, which still exists. It's the Park Restaurant, Southfield and Fort Street and Downriver in Lincoln Park. So I don't know. It's like,
that's amazing.
It's a weird thing to like think about, like, oh man, I've always been around a bar. I'm not saying like I want to continue to always be chained to a bar, but like feels natural to just like what we're doing here is just like hanging out, sitting, and just like chit-chatting.
So I always said that when I was interviewed for Hennessy, I was never looking for a job as an ambassador. I was happy running that wonderful bar in Toronto, and they said like, when are you uncomfortable and when are you comfortable? And I was like, if I'm behind a bar talking about alcohol, I'm comfortable. If you put me out anywhere else and ask me about anything else, I might be uncomfortable.
Sure.
But if I'm back there, it makes sense to me. And I always felt like the bar's safety to me. Like staff could find me even contemplating difficult decisions, leaning against the ice well, looking at the back bar, like finding the answer in the images back there.
The shapes.
Yeah.
The colors.
It was comfort.
It's wild.
But I was also happy to know that like life is chaos to me. And somebody can probably say this more profound, but like life is chaos. A bar on a Saturday night is chaos. But if you're behind the bar, you have a barrier. Like the chaos, you're in control. You said it earlier. You're the adult.
It's not
in
even.
the room.
It's not even that you're in control. You direct.
Yeah.
You're the conductor. You're not playing the trumpet, but you're telling the trumpet people to play louder.
You're
or
in charge of the
softer.
party.
You're just kind of like moving the energy and flow. And people, I really appreciate getting comments in this respect of like, man, you really set the ambiance really good. Like the music and the lighting and the smell and all of these things that people don't necessarily think about. Cool. Thank you so much for doing that. It's far and few between, but like that's what I try. That's what we try. I always try to instill that with the staff. Like, hey, take a step back. How does the room feel? I know your bar station is set up really great and you know where all your spoons and knives and stuff are, but like the guest isn't stepping behind the bar. They're sitting at the table. So sit at a chair. Is it comfortable? Is it too hot or cold? I don't check the temperature behind the bar. I stand in the middle of the floor of the room and be like, oh, does it feel comfortable or hot or too cold for the guest? Is the music too loud for the guest, not for us at the bar? And in that same way of saying like we're orchestrating in a sense of just like directing the energy, sometimes people are loud. So to combat that, we'll play faster music. We don't always play the same type of music because it just depends. Some people are like, what do you play on a Saturday night? I'm like, who's here? What time is it? Because it matters. All of those weird little things matter.
There's no reason anyone would expect this bar to exist in Detroit. And that's no knock on Detroit. I love Detroit. I'm more excited to visit Detroit than most cities. When people are like, why do you like Detroit? I was like, well, you're part of it. But also everything I've seen here is like everybody that loves Detroit loves it for a great reason. There's a lot of great architecture here. There's a wonderful vibe here. There's a hard-working, like, it's almost like everybody in Detroit is like pseudo-hospitality. Like they have that mentality of like, the job needs to get done, let's do it.
It's
like,
that weird,
no one's going to do the
it's
job
that like
for
Midwestern
you.
kind of
Do it.
vibe, yeah.
And I love Detroit for that like hard mentality. It's like, there's this, hustle's got a weird vibe to it, but like it's this weird hustle vibe of like,
it's hard working. It's not
done.
just kind of doing anything. It's just doing what you feel is right and just going for it.
I've always liked that about Detroit. And, coming from Canada, anytime you visit Detroit, they're like, oh man, I love Canada. I was like, let me guess. Before the age of 21,
sure,
you visited a lot.
Of course.
It's like, yeah, visited a lot.
I think that's a really good point, though. I never really realized that about Midwestern culture to within reason.
But I love it. It's like Detroit is a city of the world that like, when the auto plants here had a reduction, it it got forgotten about, but it's, for me, it's not lost that city of the world vibe.
No.
And it is a city of the world. And I think you are a bar that, if you're anywhere, if you're in a New York, if you're in a London, if you're in a Barcelona, you're winning all the awards.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I think you needed, please get more of an ego when it comes to that, because you all deserve it. It's amazing.
I really appreciate it. I really do. Thank you. We just, regardless of me, it's just having a good team that wants to give a great service.
Yeah.
And I always look for things that I don't get anywhere else. Not to say there aren't great restaurants that exist, but there's just not a lot of great places that it's just I can go, and the person who's working there is just like semi-knowledgeable / semi-happy to hear, this is where I am. This is what I'm doing. What can I get for you? That's like just the bare minimum. Just the bare minimum. So
totally.
if I can just perpetuate that, then I feel like I'm doing my service for the world.
Well, that's said beautifully. So with that, with your sort of mind intact, give me like a weekend in Detroit. If somebody's visiting Detroit, where are they going?
Yeah. So
and you have to include this bar.
Well,
because
thank you.
You would be
call
remiss
ahead.
if you didn't go.
Call if it's Friday or Saturday. Call us the day before, or make a reservation, or hit us an email, or whatever.
Because they're not open Sunday.
We're not open Sunday, and we're only 30 people, and we can only fit so many people in a night, in a moment / in a whole night. So just give us a heads up. So that's just, I always tell that to anyone, friends, family, promotions, like just let us know. Hey, you're from out of town. That's great. We'd love to accommodate you. Just email us, call us, reservation, whatever. Just don't show up 1 second before you want to come in at 8:00 on a Friday. And we already have people that have already done a little bit of work to secure a spot. So anyways,
rules for any good bar
that
in
are really
any
small.
city. Yeah.
Especially. So that's us. So regardless, we're in Capitol Park. Come see us. We're right next to Campus Martius, which is not even a block away. There's always random events there. The tree lighting ceremony. They do ice skating in the winter. They do summer fun events. So there's always, again, I'm saying that because you always checked on what's going on. There's always a lot of not weird, but like unique, that's a better way of saying it, unique random things happening in Detroit all the time. And I just hit up Google and I'm just like, what's going on in Detroit for the weekend? And it's usually pretty good about people because, there's so many things going on. People want to promote what's up. So having that, so I would say check out something random. And then the foundational things that are always there, the DIA, Detroit Institute of Art, is amazing. Not to say that we have the best in the world, but we have one of the top museums. Highly check that out. Really great spot. Regardless of like the millions of restaurants and bars as well. One of my, Sugar House is great. Always got to talk about restaurants, Wright and Company. I really love a little bit out of the beaten path. Southwest Detroit is a tiki bar called Mutiny. Just like the most tiki bar. There isn't a lot of tiki bars in Michigan. There's some on the other side of the state in Grand Rapids, which are really great and cool, but we're in Detroit, and that's more than an hour away from us. So that's a really great spot. Just like, it's almost like a dive tiki bar. Super cool spot. I would check that out if you're into tiki stuff. Museum, I love going there. Random events at Campus Martius. There's always stuff going on the waterfront as well in the Detroit River. And it's just like it's random. There's like they'll do outdoor concerts. They'll do at the DTE headquarters. They have there's a restaurant called Lumen because of the lights. So DTE Energy. They have like an outdoor fake grass area, and they'll do like a dome in the winter, and it's uncovered in the summer. And they just do like random events there too, and a lot of them are free. So it's really cool to be in a city where a lot of stuff is free. You just show up and it's just like, other than checking your calendar and the date and time, like it's free. They'll do like winter stuff, they'll do summer stuff, and it's a lot of, Belle Isle is a great spot. And I guess the only other random thing that I have to throw out there is Michigan's a great disc golf place, and that's my hobby. It has nothing to do with bartending, so I'm just going to throw that out there. I love disc golf. Michigan is a top disc golf place. Play some disc golf.
Let's play some disc golf next time.
Love to.
I played a lot of ultimate frisbee.
Oh my gosh, I would love to play disc golf.
All right, let's do that. Social handles for the bar for you. Where can people
Bad
find
Luck
you?
Bar Detroit. Mine is Yani Detroit, YANI Detroit. Everything for Bad Luck is just Bad Luck Bar. So we got really lucky, and the Facebook and the Insta.
You mean nobody had a bar called Bad Luck out there?
There's Bad Luck Saloon, and there was like multiple. Like for some reason, Bad Luck Saloon is very popular, but like Bad Luck Bar, Bad Luck Lounge, or Bad Luck Cocktail Bar didn't. There are some now, but at the time didn't exist. So we have the Instagram. We don't do too much on the TikTok, but we have that technically that exists somewhere. Yeah. But Instagram and Facebook, Bad Luck Bar, and we have a website, Bad Luck Bar.
Brilliant.
Love to see you.
Brother, thank you for
so
the
much.
time.
Amazing.
It's
great
amazing.
to see you. Thank you so
Always
much for
great
having
chatting.
us.